Tonight we weep the tears of Iker for Yawgmoth, the fallen father of machines. Yes, ethereal fluids trickle down our cheeks. Ethereal fluid? Gross. Well, that's what Iker is. Look it up. I just think you could have phrased it differently. Fine. How about watery discharge? Ethereal fluid it is. And now we get to the interview that inspired tonight's sudden spoiling. The thoughtful and talented MTG artist, Alan Pollack. All hail Alan Pollack. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Sure.
Now, what was the start of your, and I like to ask this, but what was the first time that you ever got paid to as an artist? What was the first job?
Oh, wow. I kind of think it was, man, that's a good question. If I'm not mistaken, it was an album cover I did for a local band. I was working at a photo retouching lab, and there was a deli around the corner from where I was working, and this guy was in a metal band working the deli. And I don't know, I went in there almost every day, just about, and talking to him about his band. And the band was called Blood Feast. And I did, eventually I showed him my work, and eventually he was telling me, they were looking for somebody to paint their first album cover, and they didn't have a lot of money. So I forget what I got paid, probably $500, nothing crazy. But I painted their album cover. I had them pose for me, took photos, and I did an album cover.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's still available to find online somewhere.
I'm sure it is. Yeah, it's the group. The band is standing posed, and they're all pretty much wearing leather jackets, and one of them is holding their head in their hand, and there's a crow picking at the neck. It's pretty nasty. It's not one of the best paintings I've ever done, but it's kind of dark in value. So it's but I think it's for what it was. I mean, it's for that kind of music, and for my first cover, it was pretty good.
I think that you obviously, it's you have that horror love in you. Well, first of all, I noticed the Overlook Hotel that you're wearing.
Yeah.
That's a cool shirt. Where and we'll get to the magic stuff, but on your site you have these macabre pieces, and I'm fascinated by where these came from. They're partially whimsical, but they're also very genuinely creepy. And for instance, I don't know if you do concept design, but they sort of remind me of the way Nightmare Before Christmas would be if it was rated R.
Well, that's a good compliment.
And where does the inspiration come from? Say for the Grimsberger?
Yeah.
Where did what's the story behind him? He's a disturbing man.
He is disturbing. The thing with that piece that was pretty cool was one of those situations where I don't do a whole lot of sketching in a sketchbook. I keep telling myself I need to do it more religiously every day, and I don't. I get involved in all these other things, and I just don't put enough time in doing that. But I do have sketchbooks that I occasionally sketch in, and I just happened to be thinking I want to do some of my own pieces. And so I opened one of my sketchbooks. I was looking through it. I wish I have sketchbooks sitting here. I know it's in one of them, but I don't want to take up your time to find it. But
if you do want to, just FYI, if you find it later and you want to send me a shot of it or whatnot, I can put it in.
Sure. But basically it was this headshot that I had sketched of this side view profile of this guy. It was weird. It wasn't even that great of a sketch. It was kind of pretty bad, actually. So it was odd that I found it in the sketchbook and thought oh, what could I do with that? So I think what I did was I took tracing paper and I put it over the head, and I started just doodling. And before you knew it, I started refining the face a bit more and making it look better than it did. And I started like extending the body down a little bit, and just I put a hat on them, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. I like that. And so I decided, well, what can I do with it? And I don't know. This is just what I do. I look at something, I start adding stuff to it, and then I go, well, what could he be doing? And so I just, as I was drawing him, I don't know. I don't know. There must be something wrong with me. It just was like, give me flowers and like.
I don't know if like there's nothing wrong with you at all. I mean, I love horror. I mean, like, and that's the thing about horror. Wes Craven put it perfectly, and I believe this is true. He says that horror is boot camp for the psyche, and basically, when you're getting it out, you get it out for a reason. I mean, like it's you got to get it out. But what's so truly disturbing about it is the fact that you are able to paint such beauty. Like it's a beautiful, like it looks like a beautiful sunset in this gorgeous, like,
right.
Like tree-lined area, and the house is so warm and inviting, and the door's slightly open, and it's truly great. But I wonder, like, are these, like, for instance, now the Jacko, the only reason I ask this is because we did a reveal for our Artist Proofs Cube that we're doing a series, and one of your pieces is in it, and it was for Rejuvenation Chamber, and on the back of it you did a sketch of Michael Jackson, and I was wondering, like, I think I saw one other instance where you include him in artwork. Is there like
I did a sketch of Michael Jackson?
Yes, you did. In Rejuvenation Chamber. It's really good too. I mean, it's funny. I mean,
I don't remember doing that.
Yeah, you just did. It's just him grinning, like
that's weird.
Right? And it's perfect because that whole, like, in the 80s, he's he was known for having his chamber, which apparently his agents made up. Like that wasn't even, which is like, that's an interesting thing to make up for somebody to, like. And then he was able to do his song, like, Leave Me Alone with the Press. I'm like,
right.
Okay, buddy. But are you, like, fan of Michael Jackson, or is it just being smarmy?
I am a fan of Michael Jackson. I especially when I was little, the Jackson 5 still, well, for me, when I was little, the Jackson 5 and the Osmond brothers. I don't know if you've ever heard of the
I have heard of the Osmonds. Yes. I think there's 300 of them now, like, in total.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but they were, the Osmonds and the Jacksons were like Jackson 5. They were like, the white band and the black band. I mean, they were like the two iconic, they did the dance routine and, very poppy, and, they were both great for what they did. But the Jackson 5 still to this day, I mean, I love their music. And Michael Jackson went on, to do great music.
He did do great music. It's a shame that he had such a complicated and dark life, but you can't negate his talent, unfortunately. Like, you can't, it's impossible. I mean, you can't argue that it's not good stuff, but it's a shame. But you also did a really cool sketch. You do these really, like, you're really good at doing these, like, sort of sinister looking side, like, view kind of things. But what was the inspiration behind this? I'm pulling up the name, but it's the Chuckles Last Stand. What made you paint that one? I'm a horror fanatic, so these are just very interesting to me.
Well, again, with a lot of the stuff that I come up with horror, I guess because I guess I grew up watching old horror movies. My dad always watched them. He watched Star Trek, the early Star Trek. So I was always watching the real old black and white horror movies. So, but I found myself over the course of time not only liking horror, but I like weird stuff, like weird movies, like the City of Lost Children and Brazil and
That's
Wild at Heart. Yeah, Wild at Heart, and just, Eraserhead and Raising Arizona, and just like weird, dark humor, basically.
Yeah.
And surrealism and that kind of stuff was always something I liked. That's kind of what I'm doing for myself now, is that I'm going down that road, is more of a surrealist, darker, weird, kind of like you said, with humor, but like dark. I have no intentions of getting to the point where I'm considered a dark artist, where it's just real heavy and real nasty. Not that I don't like that stuff, because I do, but I don't want to do that. I just don't want
your style per se.
Yeah, it's just not. I like having a little bit of weirdness and like disturbing, but like making you laugh at the same time. So you're like, you don't know what to do when you see it. I like that. But the chuckles, as you asked, was on the website Infected by Art. I had I have work on there, and they had a contest for like this comic cover. I'm trying to think what it was called. It wasn't Tales from the Dark Side. That was a TV show, but it was something like along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And it was I think the company was ran by like Bela Lugosi's family or something like that. And so they were going to do this giveaway, like for like I think it was $1,000. If you won the contest, you got the cover. You were going to be on the cover and got $1,000. Well, I won it, and I got $1,000, but the cover never happened because something happened legally with Lugosi's family, something like that, and that never happened. But there wasn't any story or theme to it. It was just like, what am I going to do? I want to do something creepy but weird, and I have never painted a clown before, so I felt like, well, let me do something with a clown. And I'm like, what can I do? And the balloons make it kind of silly, at the same time. But then I'm like, well, I'll make them a zombie, and I don't know. I just pieced it together. It's kind of what I do. I just kind of start out with this really basic idea, and then I just kind of keep adding to it and go, oh, this would be funny, this would be weird. People are gonna, unfortunately, I have this thing in me where I overthink it and start to think, well, people are gonna think this is dumb, and am trying really hard to fight that, because but it's just what I do to myself. Whenever I come up with an idea where I'm like, that's really cool, I second guess it and go, people are going to think I'm an idiot, or people are, other artists that I admire are going to think like, what's wrong with him? This is stupid,
I mean, but has anybody ever actually said that to you? I mean,
no, of course not.
Be hard pressed to find anybody that would be less than impressed by your artwork. It's so fascinating to me that a lot of the artists that I talk to, a lot of you guys who are like objectively excellent artists, it's this thing that just taunts a lot of you, and it's such a bummer, because I wish that you could be an art, like the audience's like point of view for just a second, and then I think that it would all go away, because it boggles my mind, because like, for instance, like you made, I mean, speaking of covers, you made the cover of Spectrum, right? Which is, I mean, that had to have been incredibly awesome, right?
Oh yeah.
It's called In the Country of the Blind.
Right.
What was the inspiration behind that?
So with that one, that was a science fiction cover for Tor Books, and the story itself, much like many of the science fiction covers that I've been asked to do, are not science fiction in the sense of like Star Wars or something where you're on another planet with these alien creatures and this really cool landscapes and all these different costumes and different things that people, it's like a lot of the stuff that I was getting asked to do on book covers back then was like nanotechnology, which you can't see. So it's like this chair, but this chair is made up like these microscopic robots. Like you can't illustrate that. That's dumb.
Yeah, how do you?
Right. So yeah, it's hard. So for me, when I do an illustration for a cover, I like to have the cover represent the book somehow. It's just, I grew up really admiring Michael Whalen. He's probably my favorite, if not one of my top 5 favorite artists. And he always manages to capture something from the book that when you look at it, you're like, I want to read the book. And then you can look at the cover and say, oh, this is from the book. That's that character. That's what I like about illustration. So I try to do that. Not everybody does, but that's what I like to do. And I struggle with it because sometimes the book is not great. Sometimes the book is not visual. Sometimes the book is not very sci-fi. In that case, with that particular book, In the Country of the Blind, it was sci-fi in the sense that it wasn't taking place right now, but it was like 20 years in the future. Well, that's not going to look very sci-fi. There's some things that might have changed, but not to the point of, crazy science fiction spaceships, all this kind of stuff going on.
Yeah.
So with that book, I ended up reading about, I don't know, maybe half the book. And I'm like, I don't have any idea what I'm going to do for this. I have no idea. And I called Donato Giancola, who I'm good friends with, and I was talking to him like, how do you do this? It was one of my earlier covers. So I'm like, how do you do this? Like, this is like crazy. And he's like, I just do what I want to do sometimes for my portfolio. If I can't find it in the book, I just do what I want regardless. And I'm like, I can't think that way. I just can't do that. So I ended up doing some quick sketches, and the deadline, I had to get it done the next day. I got the sketches done. I sent them in. It was late at night. I went to bed and I'm thinking like, man, these are not good. These are not good ideas. I don't even want to paint these ideas. If they approve one of them, I don't want to do it. I really don't want to do it. And so I woke up the next day early and I'm like, I got to come up with something better than that. And one of the things that I still love his work is John Jude Palancar does a lot of like pretty much like conceptual surrealism kind of ideas. It's kind of what he does. Mm-hmm. And I really like it. And I don't know if I had just seen some of his work at, a LuxCon or a convention or something. It was on my mind and I'm like, that's really what I want to do more of. I'm tired of doing just scenes from the book. I want to go more conceptual. So I thought about it. I thought about the story and I just tried to do a simple version of the story, a simple figure, big figure at the time. I just remember this. I had an agent at the time. The agent was telling me that the book company that it was for, it wasn't Tor Books, it was HarperCollins, a different company, was saying to my agent, well, he doesn't do figures. He doesn't do figures well. So I'm like, F you, I'm doing a figure. So I did this 3 foot by 4 foot painting, which is the size of that painting. It's huge. And I did just a big giant figure to be like, I can do figures, people. Don't tell me I can't do figures. So that's what that was about. And then I just added other things from the story to make it that image.
And is that like a character from the book?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the female character was African-American from what I remember. And I don't know if it looks exactly like her. I happened to go into New York City and get a model and hired a model and paid her to pose. But
I was going to ask because the level of detail is so intense. It's like, I wonder, do you do that? Do you prefer to do that with the way that when you have to paint people or, portraits, do you prefer to have the live model or do you prefer reference photos or do they just come out of the ether?
I always use some sort of reference if it's piecing together a bunch of different images that I can find, or I like to have someone pose for me, because if you have someone pose for you, you can set up the lighting, you can mimic a costume, mimic some sort of fabric items that you can therefore change and turn into something. So you have the big thing is the lighting and the shadows. That's really the biggest thing, because to make it up is really, if you make it up, it looks made up. The realism doesn't come across. So for me, it's a balance of having the model and the reference, but not copying it. You have to make it look like it makes sense. And that's part of the challenge there. But yeah, I like to do that.
I mean, and what a thrill for the model to end up. I mean, like, I wonder if like down the line she's, perusing an art books in Barnes and Noble and saw that, it was like that's got to be, I mean, I'd have that on my coffee table. But so when you say Donato Giancola, like, now I read that you talked about maybe that you had, or that not maybe, but you had said that you learned from some techniques from him. Was that what you were referencing right there, or is there more to that story?
No, I mean, Donato, I met Donato many years ago at, I want to say it was in San Antonio, and it was a Worldcon is what it's called. Kind of like a book convention, book publishers convention, science fiction. And I was introduced to him through Todd Lockwood, and we just got to talking and got to become friends. And then any chance, he's always doing like painting demos at conventions. So I sat and watched him, asked a lot of questions, and just from me talking to him and such, and running into him again at another convention. There was one in Rye, New York called Lunicon. I would run into him there. And, we just got to be friends. And then eventually, he invited me over to his house, watch him paint. So I did that probably more than once. And yeah, just asked a bunch of questions. He's not afraid to, give information out. Some people don't like to do that, but he's really good at like sharing, you know.
It's astonishing. I got a chance to interview him. I mean, he's a ninja. I mean, I remember like during the interview, he was painting and doing the interview, and he didn't miss a beat. Like he was able to like bilocate his brain, just like, but then also he has been, his name has come up more often as far as either who people have been like apprentices under him or influenced by him. He seems to have been an integral part of so many artists, like stories, and it's fascinating. So I'd imagine, I mean, seeing him paint live it's got to be crazy cool. And do you think that you're like at that point in time was that how you stepped into the fantasy realm, or what was the thing that kickstarted you being able to get your foot in the door so that you were able to go into magic?
Well, that was TSR, the Dungeons and Dragons company. I was freelancing I had an agent at the time, and I happened to send my work to TSR to try to get work to get on their Dungeons and Dragons, whatever it was, any product that they had. I just wanted to do some art for them. So I had a basic portfolio together. I don't think I had anything printed at the time when I first got my first job through them, but it was either Dungeon or Dragon magazine. I'm not sure if it was an interior or if it was a cover, but it was one or the other. And then I continued to get work for their magazine. And then eventually I was asked they were looking for a staff artist, and the art director that I was working with for freelance asked me if I was interested in being on staff. So I said yes. And then I met them in New York City at a toy show, got offered the job. I took the job and was working on staff there for a few years. So once I was doing that, I learned a lot working there. And then when the company downsized and sold to Wizards of the Coast, I was let go with a bunch of other people. And then I had all that experience because when I was working there, I was doing about 12 covers for them a year. And then I had all that experience. So then when I left there and I went freelance again, I just sent my samples to Wizards of the Coast, and they eventually hired me to do magic.
What was your first magic card that you did for them?
It was for Tempest. So it was like Abandon Hope, and what was the other one? Man. Yeah, it was there were two cards I did. I can't think of the name of the other one. Can't even picture it off the top of my head. Anyway.
Would you, when you like, I love I mean, it's easy to ask what your favorite piece that you did for the game is. And I'm sure you've answered that, but I'm also curious as to what piece or pieces were the most challenging, and what were the reasons why they were challenging?
Ooh, most challenging. I think always for me, the most challenging is when I just can't relate to the art suggestion. That's probably the most challenging.
What would be an example of that?
Example of that, you won't see an example of that because they didn't print the card.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is they didn't print the card so everything that you've done that is public, you were able to say, I get it. And is that something that artists can do? They are able to is turning down a brief or not taking a brief, does that create bad blood, or is that just par for the course in an artist's career?
No, it's okay to turn down stuff. Absolutely. I didn't really understand that in the earlier part of my career. I took everything that came my way because I was so worried that if I didn't, I was not going to have any money. I was worried, I wasn't going to get another job. So I never refused anything, which is not the best approach, because you end up taking work that's not really suited for you, and then it shows. And I think, with magic, I think that happened a few times, and I'm just trying to think of some of them that might be like that. I know with magic, there's a lot of things that come across where I'm thinking like, this is so weird. Like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do with this. Like, that happens a lot with magic. It's probably why I'm not doing magic anymore.
I mean, is that because it's because it's too esoteric? Is that the reason why it's just you had a harder time wrapping your head around the narrative, so to speak?
Yeah, well, I think well, it's things have changed over the years. So I mean, I don't know how they're doing it now, but I know in the beginning there was, an art suggestion, just like if you were doing a book cover, and they would say, they might. I'm trying to think if back in the earlier days they gave you examples of art of like, this is what we need it to look like, kind of thing. Then they started doing style guides. So they'd have a style guide where they would send you a style guide, and it'd be like, this is the landscape, these are the characters, this is the way they dress, this is the creatures that are involved, and you would have other artists renderings of what the characters were, and then you were supposed to do your version of those characters, which is good and bad for me, because it's hard to see something that looks cool, that already looks great, and now you're supposed to do a better version of that yourself. That's hard to do for me, maybe not for other people. So I always struggle with it. Plus, the thing with magic was always like edgy, edgy, edgy. That's always been their thing from day one. It's like everything has to be edgy. You can't just paint a cool dragon. It's got to be like over the top, crazy, all this crazy stuff going on. And I just don't think that way. I have a simpler approach. I like iconic compositions. I don't like all this crazy stuff going on. So not that I don't like other artists that do it, because I do, but for me, I don't think that way. So I found what ends up happening with magic or with any company is they hire you to do what you do. So if I did, let's say for Dungeons and Dragons, if I got asked to do my laundry list of art for the year, and a couple of them had like a guy with a glowing sword, and it turned out well, I do a couple more glowing swords down the road for Dungeons and Dragons. Then I get laid off. Magic comes along. They look at my portfolio. They go, "Oh, he does that. He does glowing swords really well. Let's have him do this. Let's have him do this." Next thing you know, I've got a portfolio of glowing swords, or you know what I mean? And so that's what happens. So if they see that, like, okay, like Donato likes to do hands, so he's always wanting to do hands.
He does like to do hands.
He'll give him hands all day long, or he'll figure out a way to get hands in there. He's good at doing that.
Now that you mention it, that's that he does. Yeah, and they're great hands too.
Yeah. So like for me, I never had in my portfolio like a ton of dragons or angels or demons, which are like the top things that everybody wants to paint. And so they'll go to Brom for that. They'll go to Randy Post for that, or at least back in the day they did. And other guys that do that, pretty regularly. That's what they do. So for me, since I didn't have it, I would get like goofy things. I would get goofy ideas, like the one I have of Noggin Whack, where the guy's getting hit in the head with a fish on a brick, and
which is hilarious, by the way.
I love that piece. I love that piece. But there's been a lot of them like that, where you're like, this is so over the top stupid. Like, I don't even know how to make this look good. And then, then you're up against like other people are going to see this, and they're going to go, what's this? This guy sucks. Like, what is this? Oh my so that's the problem.
See, really, because because a lot of times, especially in, there's so much, there can be like super heavy sets. At least earlier in the game's history, there were some sets that were just almost nihilistic, and the way that things like panned out. So like, I welcome like a good dose of like humor. Did you seem to be somebody who was also used a lot for artifacts for a while there, yeah. And was that something that you had? Was that like an example of what you meant by like getting like pigeonholed into doing a certain thing?
Yeah, well, that's what happens. You get asked to do one, and they like it, and then they think like, well, next time we'll have them do more. And then, I forget what the first set was that I did that for, but where. Next thing you know, in that set, I had like 5 artifacts, which were fine. I don't mind doing them. They're simpler. I can focus on one element and not have to worry about all the craziness, like I was saying. So I don't mind that. But that's what happens. Or somebody that does land cards. It's like they do a couple. John Avon, great at doing land cards. Mm-hmm. He does a couple, and they think like, wow, this guy's lands are great. or fans say they're great, and the next thing you know, he's doing all lands. But I think that's what he likes to do anyway.
Yeah, John's a land lover.
Yeah.
But but looking through your portfolio, at least in Magic, you've had a chance to shine, and you do shine on. You've done some gorgeous lands. You've done some really fascinating pieces, and in edgy too, in a sense that I mean, I don't even know if it would be able to be allowed today, but I think it's called Orcish Blood.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Orcish Bloodletter, is it?
Blood Painter.
Blood Painter.
Yeah.
That one is strikingly violent. And
yes.
But it's also I can't help but think it was sort of at least it had to have been a part of an inspiration for Blood Artists, because there is the same sort of theme and the angles, and it's just sort of, I mean, I this is just my theory, but I mean, was that a piece that you got a blowback on, or is that something they'd let you go to town with?
No, I can do whatever I want. I mean, they didn't give me any restrictions at all. It was basically, some sort of, I think it was something along the lines of, using the blood of a victim to either paint yourself or to, use for power in some way. I posed for the victim.
Yeah, really?
And I probably posed for the orc as well, but it obviously doesn't look like me. But the victim's me. And it was just, anytime I get to do anything weird and creepy like that, I like doing that. It's fun.
Plague Wind too. Was that one that you had fun with, or is that one that you felt like this is too crazy? What were your thoughts on that one?
No, I like that one too. That's one of my favorite ones, especially early on.
It's brutal. I mean, how do you figure out how the body's going to do that? You know what I mean?
I don't even know if it can do that. That's the thing. I remember I know an artist friend of mine had said to me back when they did it, that doesn't look right. The arms can't do that. But I'm thinking it's Plague Wind. It's a serious, crazy wind that's pushing the arms so far back that they're out of joint. You know what I mean? So that's what I tried to do.
Yeah, it's jammed glass into a rock, it looks like.
Right.
And then even with the pieces that you the worm, I love the worm, the worm token. And what I find really fascinating about it is that you managed to it sort of breaks that magic rule of not making there's a silo in the background, and there's a little deer, and there's a fence, and it's like magic bursting into the real world.
Right.
Loads of fun. What would you say, I guess, then? What was your favorite piece to do in the entire game? Was it
I mean, early on when I did Urborg Skeleton, I think I liked that because it was horror related, it was a skeleton, and I liked the color scheme, and I liked the way the skeleton turned out. Plague Wind, the Decree of Justice, where that was a bunch of angels. I thought that was fun. I did like Noggin Whack. I mean, I just like the way that came out for some reason.
And
let me think. I don't know. There's been a Waning Worm. There's been some cool creature kind of things. I usually like to do the creature things. That kind of makes me happy when I get to do that. So
the zombie minotaur.
That's one of my favorites. I love that one. Yeah,
it's great. It's a definitely. You don't get to. I mean, I don't think we've seen a zombie minotaur until since then, until Amon Ket came out, and it's awesome. It's crazy good stuff. And I wonder, have you ever done any concept art for horror films or anything along those lines?
Nope.
I feel like you would be so well suited for that. I mean, it just seems like it'd be second nature. Do you think of stories behind these paintings when you sketch them? Do they ever evolve into something that becomes bigger than, say, the piece that you create? If you're doing a horror piece that's personal?
Yeah, personal stuff. I mean, I don't consider myself a writer, but I do often think about man, I can make this into some sort of book some sort of some sort of story to go with this for sure. But I haven't gone down that road yet.
Right, because Mr. Sandman, I mean, like that alone, I mean,
yeah, that's definitely one for
there's
sure.
there's something about that just it screams like graphic novel,
Right, yeah.
Have you? I mean, would that be something that you would be interested in doing? If not, I mean, I'd imagine you could do like at least covers for those kind of things. I mean, like,
well, I would think so, but I honestly don't know how to go about doing that, because when you look at graphic novels or any of that stuff, it just seems like, and I could be wrong, but it just seems like those companies are looking for comic guys. But I do see painted covers, and so I have sent samples out to those companies, but haven't heard anything from those companies. So I don't know if I need to do some comic conventions and have my stuff out there for them to see. Maybe that would be the way to go.
I think that as a horror fan, my thoughts would be if you can pick what would be like your favorite horror movie or favorite horror movies that you had to pick. Like, what would be some examples of
that? I mean, there's like stuff that's really scary, like of course The Exorcist comes to mind, but like The Ring and I love the Evil Dead movies, and I tend to like some of the more like Reanimator and Bride of Reanimator and From Beyond, and some of the weirder
like body horror kind of.
Well, not so much. I mean, body horror, not in the sense of like Saw. I mean, I like those movies, but not like that.
That's torture porn.
Yeah.
Body horror is like, have you ever seen Dead Alive?
Love Dead Alive.
Yeah, like it's so crazy that Peter Jackson, like that's like, and what I love about it is he's not ashamed of it. He's
yeah, right.
Completely proud of it. But it's like I mean, I could see the Fangoria crowd. Like if you did an Evil Dead style, did like a representation of Evil Dead in your style, I could see people eating it up. I could see it being on T-shirts because you can do the likenesses so well, and everybody lives for that kind of stuff. I mean, like they have these Bloody Disgusting has these people reprinting, and I've seen people who's gotten art on it. That's like, you're much better. I'm just saying. But what do you say that? Have you ever seen that movie Teeth? By the way, like, have you ever seen that movie, the horror movie Teeth?
I have not seen that.
You must see it. I got 2 words for you. It's about it's a young girl who goes to a Christian camp for abstinence, and she finds out that she has vagina dentata. And
I think I've heard of that movie. Yeah,
it's great. I could see you loving it. But so the next question would be first. This is actually one of my patrons asked. The story behind Sudden Spoiling. Were those what was the brief? Was the brief specific? But who were the models, and like, how do you feel about that piece? Because it's so striking. It's
for Sudden Spoiling.
Mm-hmm.
Just that one. I thought you mentioned 2 pieces, but I guess that was just the one.
Did I? I might have brain farted, but I believe that I believe Sudden Spoiling was where I was going. Excuse my idiocy.
That's okay. Sudden Spoiling was me.
Both of you, or both
of you. Yep. Yeah.
How do you how do you do that? And like that stuff interests me, because how do you change your face enough to make it like, I mean, it just blows my mind when artists can do that. I mean, like, to me, it's like you're doing an act of like God, like as far as creating a new human face. I know that there's technique behind it, but it's mind blowing. It's just like, do you photograph yourself and then line it up? I mean, is that what happens?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it blows my mind. And also what I really love about your paintings is the use of color. I mean, you seem to have it's great the way that you will occasionally throw in these incredible bursts of like bright colors to help accentuate everything. I mean, was that something that you did early on, or was that something that you picked up throughout your career?
I think I did that early on. I've gotten better at it, I think, but I certainly did that. I mean, one of my earlier influences were the Hildebrands, brothers Hildebrandt, Greg Hildebrandt, Tim Hildebrandt's not with us anymore, but the Hildebrands are, and they did a lot of, they're great with color. They're really great with color. And the other thing that I always liked about them is they would set up their paintings almost like a Disney still, old Disney stills, where it's like a diorama where you have things in the foreground, a middle ground, and a background, and they were all separated in a way like a film still from an animated cell or something. And I always like that. So I try to do that with my work. I don't paint the same way, but I like that. That's the thing where I'm talking about a simple idea where, you know, it's the composition is it's kind of steering your eye in a direction, but it's not overkill. It's just like very simple setup with lighting and color. And Hildebrands were always great at that. And that's a big influence for me.
That makes so much sense looking at your work. That's the kind of insight that is really fascinating, because Disney did do, obviously because it was, you know, you had to layer the cells in order to get the effect.
Yeah.
And there was something about it that you don't see in animation today because they don't have to do it.
Right.
And I miss it. I miss that kind of like that contrast, that there's something appealing about it.
Yeah.
And there's something that is imitating nature with the way, or at least the way that the eye sees nature. It's the way we see things. It's so true. But what's great is that you are also not afraid to use these really bright psychedelic colors, even if the work itself is the overall tone is dark. And is that something that, like, is that something that you just, when you started doing that early, did you have people that were like, that were, closed-minded about that kind of stuff? Because it seems so it's so brash and brave to do that. And as a horror lover, I love to see that kind of stuff, because it's, for example, there's nothing like a scary movie during the daylight is sometimes even more scary than one that happens at night, right? Is that something that you were able to just do and nobody ever, went up against it and said, oh, you have to do it this way?
No, no one's ever said anything negative about it. I certainly, when I think about, other than Hildebrandt, when I think about horror, though, I grew up reading a lot of the early fanzines, Creepy and Eerie, and there was like Psycho and Nightmare. And so there were a lot of these earlier guys like Bama, that did like these great portraits of the Universal monsters, and he pushed the color really hard. The old Hammer films, the old Dracula Hammer films, had like the blood was like it was bright red, and like it had these really like edge lighting with like greens and blues, and like crazy. Famous Monsters magazines had these crazy paintings on the cover with bright color, and it was horror, so that probably had an influence, I would think.
Yeah. Like that Mario Bava movie, I think it's called A Drop of Water. I don't know if you ever saw it. It's about a woman she takes a dead body, and she's like she's a sort of an undertaker, and she takes in this supposedly dead body of a witch, and she steals a ring from it. And oh my God.
What's the name of it? I want to write that down.
It's it's a trilogy. I believe the movie's called Black Sunday, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And it's a segment in the movie, but oh my God, it scared me so bad. And it's just like that. Like the main colors are pink and green, and it's like it's again, it's really cool insight that you catch that. And it's
Suspiria. Did you ever see Suspiria?
Oh my God, Suspiria is great.
Same idea.
Exactly. I remember seeing that. It's like, and it heightens it. You'd think that like it would make it like corny, or that it would take you out of it, but it actually creates it as if you're experiencing this thing on LSD.
It's weird. Yeah, for sure.
And now you're a musician as well, right?
Yes.
How do you manage to like be? Do those types of how do they interact? Like, do you ever do you see a song that you're writing, or do you like have any sort of synesthesia when it comes to the creative process behind that?
I think it's pretty similar to painting, in that you start off like with painting, you start off with an idea in your head, you do some doodles, rough sketches, and it's a layering effect of sketching, referencing, final drawing, painting, it's like this layered effect, and then the varnishing at the end. And with music, it's similar. It's mathematical, so it's not the same in that regard, but it is. I am very musical, so I'm always have beats and rhythms and music and all the time that I'm thinking of, whether it's a song I already heard or my own ideas, driving the car, walking, whatever it may be, all day long. So typically what I've done in my life is I'll bring up my phone and bring up the voice memo or GarageBand on my phone, and I'll record either me humming an idea or my guitar, or I'll put it down. And it's the same idea. It's like, you get this basic, like rough melody or rough rhythm down. I always start with rhythm, chords, and then I'll listen to it and I'll go, yes or no. And then I'll play around with that. And then I'll start adding more chords to it. And I'll go, okay, that's good for the first verse. I can go into this bridge, and I start piecing things together. And it's the same kind of idea, for me anyway. And then, and then eventually you piece it together, you put some melody to it, you put lyrics to it, you record it, and the final varnish of the music is the editing and the mastering, and then you end up with a final product. It's just a different way to be creative, but I love it. I think if I could have figured out a way to make music and not have to be in a band and go on tour, which I don't think I could have handled that.
It's a rough, you have to be sort of made for that road life.
I think so. But I love the playing and the recording part of it. I really like writing music a lot. So, I've written a lot of songs, all different kinds of songs. I grew up being very much into heavy metal and hard rock. So I've played a lot of that, and now I'm in a duo with my wife where we're doing like more acoustic stuff, but we're doing like classic rock and all different things like that. So
do you ever work on, say, a song that leads to an idea for a painting or vice versa?
I don't know if that's happened, but I do, like, if I have had some ideas of I haven't done it yet, but I've had some ideas of doing an art book where I can combine like images that I've come up with for myself and then writing music to it and having that all be one package.
That would be really cool. Like you could even, you could make it into some sort of like online gallery too, where it's like a multi-sensory kind of experience, because I have synesthesia with music myself, that when I listen to music, I see shapes and I see colors. And so whenever, like, for me, I didn't learn until college that not everybody watches music when they listen to it. And at a party, I told everybody to shut up because I was trying to watch the music, and they were like, oh. And that's when I found out. But it's fascinating to me that you could be so, whenever there's like a fully developed, on both sides. And so are you classically trained as a musician, or are you self-taught?
I'm self-taught art and self-taught music.
Really?
All around. Yeah.
Did you have any mentors that you, when growing up, was there anybody that was like there to help, be formative for you when you needed that kind of support? Was your family, how did they take to you attempting to do a career in the arts when you started?
Not well. It wasn't horrible. I'm not going to say that, but my dad was a postman. He very much believed in like blue collar,
right,
part of a union, benefits, steady pay, the whole thing. So I think, as any parent, you want your kids to do well. So his fear of like, how are you going to be an artist? He had no idea I didn't have any idea how that was going to happen. So there was that fear from my dad for sure. And he did not understand me staying home and working a part-time job. I lived with my parents pretty long because I didn't have anybody to move in with. I couldn't afford to go out. So
not easy.
So I was in a band and I was working a part-time job and going to college, but I was also building my portfolio at the same time. So I was doing a bunch of things. It wasn't like I was sitting around watching TV. I was doing stuff. But he didn't really understand what I was doing. He didn't get it. He wasn't a creative person like that. So he didn't get it. My mom didn't say anything. She was like, oh, whatever you want to do. But my dad was kind of pushing me like to be like, you're wasting your life. What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm doing something that I'm going to want to do for a living, not be a postman. You're not even happy being a postman. I want to do something where I'm going to enjoy this for the rest of my life. So that was the goal,
And I'd imagine it was a very vindicating and probably like, when you became successful, how was his reaction? Was he able to see that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think when I got the job at TSR and I was moving out to Wisconsin and the whole thing, I think that's when he was like, oh, that's great. He appreciated that I stuck with it and that there was actually an end game, it was like, this is going to be my career, like for real, not just like I'm painting pictures. And, I mean, you know how it is. I mean, for most people, if you're out in public and someone, says I'm an artist, you're like,
Okay.
that's what most people think. Or if, even for me, like, I'm doing it professionally, but if someone comes up to me and says, oh, you're like, I just did a convention, you have people come up to you that are like, oh, you're pretty good. And then they're really like, my friend's an artist. And I'm like, that's usually, and you're like, what are you supposed to say to that?
Well, yeah, it's like you would never go up to a doctor and be like, my friend's a doctor. Or you know what I mean? Like but it's like, it's the thing is like being an artist, it's a lot easier to just say that you're something.
Yeah.
Whereas it's it's like you said, you can't fuck off when you're trying to make it. And it does make sense that somebody who is not creatively minded sees you in a room doodling, and that's what they think you're doing. They think that you're just passing your time. And it's a hard thing to convey. And it always seems to happen that there's, it's rare that somebody is born into an artistic family where it's understood early that this is something that's viable. At least from what I've interviewed. And it's always wonderful to see people go after the thing that it is that they want to do. Do you think that you have, if you could say like of the work that your body of work, if you could pick like one or two paintings that you think would be the ones that you would say, this is my legacy, this is what I would love to leave, which ones would those be?
Wow. I feel like I haven't done that yet. I haven't done that piece yet. When I did the in the Country of the Blind cover that you mentioned earlier, when I did that, and that, not only I felt that was a big step. That was like a step away from everything I'd done to that point, and it got on the cover of Spectrum. I mean, when they told me, they emailed me and said, your cover is in your painting is in the running to be on the cover of Spectrum. I was like, I nearly fell out of my chair. I couldn't even believe it. I'm like, how is that even possible? So, and then I got the email saying, you're on the cover, and Michael Whalen's on the back of all things. Can you imagine? I mean, it's like, it blew my mind.
Well, I mean, do you remember what you were wearing, where you were sitting? I mean, imagine
I know where I was sitting. I don't remember what I was wearing. I had a studio. My first house, I had a studio in the basement, and I was sitting in my chair in my studio when I saw it. So I know where I was for sure.
And what do you do? Do you just like start like shrieking, or? I mean,
oh my God, I was like in shock at first, but then I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. You got to be, I went up and told my ex-wife and the whole thing. But yeah, I was like, and then I sold the painting probably for, at that time it was the most I ever sold a painting for, and so it was a big deal.
That is a big deal. I mean, I wonder, did you ever hear back from the model? Did she know that she?
The thing that happened with that, and I don't know her name, and she's probably never going to see this video anyway. But like the thing is, I mean, whenever I do something where I have a model, I pay them I tell them up front, this is for a book cover.
Right.
I pay them what I'm going to pay them, and they're good with it, and that's the end of it. Years later, she had contacted me through email and was like mad because it was like, on the cover of Spectrum or something. I'm like,
serious?
What are you talking about? I paid you for the cover, and I'm not, this is what it is. It's my artwork. It's my painting. I mean, so, yeah, so that's happened.
Well, see, now she done disappointed me. Like, that sucks. That sucks out loud. And it's like, what are you doing this for? You're mad? My first thought would be, I thought it was win-win. I mean, like,
Yeah, well, you would think so.
right. Yeah. It seems like it's
I
like,
mean, and most people, if I said, I want to use you to, I want you to pose for me for a magic card, you'd be
uh-huh.
like, I'll do it for free. Most people would,
Yeah, exactly. Like I was thinking just that. I'm like, you got paid and you're on the cover of the prestigious
Right.
fantasy art. What are you mad about? I mean, it seems like maybe this is beyond the painting. Maybe you've got some things that you need to sort out
Well,
privately.
it's probably a money thing. It's just people, it's just like people stew. It's a chance to make more money, and they think they're getting ripped off somehow. I'm sure that's what it was.
Gosh, well, if you ever want to rip me off like that, feel free.
The
I
thing
would
is,
be,
it's not like I made millions of dollars off of it. I
but
mean, I
no,
got
but
paid. I got paid to do the cover, and then I got the cover. No one paid me for the cover of Spectrum. It just happens.
no, I mean, and that's the thing. Is like, I mean, it's just, and well, I'm glad. I mean, I'm sorry that I had to bring up
Oh
that.
no, it's not a big deal.
I mean, and if she does see it, I'll just say to her, shh, boo, boo, poor decision making, madam. If you, and that's just not nice. If you could pick any like painting, whether or not it's owned, if money was no object, you could buy any painting you wanted to in the world.
Brother,
Which one would it be?
if I could buy any painting in the
Any
world,
painting, you could afford any painting. There's no budget, so
man.
if you need to buy the Mona Lisa, you have it in cash. You can just.
Man, I can't think of any particular painting, but I could tell you it would probably be Norman Rockwell painting. I would have to say it would have to be a Norman Rockwell painting. Any Norman Rockwell painting. So I could never imagine owning one. So any one of them would probably make me like, oh my God, I can't imagine.
It's amazing that there was a time when people were like poo-pooing him and not giving the credit that he is like so obviously deserving of. I mean, just because he had a wholesome point of view, it seemed to chat people's asses. And it was like, he's just good. He's like,
yeah.
There's a reason why he's Norman Rockwell.
I mean, go look at some of his original paintings. I mean, that's the thing. If you just see like the cover of a magazine or a book where you see his art, and you don't, it's just an image. It's just an image. You have to see paintings in person to really appreciate what goes into it. If I showed you just a picture of something and said, yeah, this took me, 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month to paint, you just can't understand until you see the art and see the thing in front of you, and then you go, oh, okay.
It's mind-blowing because you see where you guys have made the strokes, you see where the work, I mean, you see the actual like the physical work that goes into it. You see the lacquer, you see that it's not this flat thing, it's three-dimensional, and
right.
It is you're absolutely right on that. I mean, and
it's your time in your life, time out of your life, time away from your family, time, your mental, your thought process. It's your time, it's your hands, your paint, it's everything that you are is going into that painting, and that's what you're seeing. Mm-hmm. Like I remember I took a class for modern art history, and we were learning about Van Gogh and Picasso, things like that, and I think it was Picasso. I was not like this huge fan of Picasso. Mm-hmm. Learning about Picasso, right? Watching seeing his work and everything. And then we went to the Modern Art Museum in New York City, and after learning about him and his process and how he started out and where he ended up and how he came up with what he was painting and everything, when you see it in person, once you know his story and you see it in person, you're like in shock. You can't even believe you feel like you're meeting him in person for the first time. That's how it feels.
Yeah, I mean, I remember. I mean, I went to Spain when I was 15, and I got to see Guernica. And you turn the corner and you walk into this giant room, and it bowls you over, like the way that it was intended, because of the fact that of what it's about. It literally, I remember like kind of like seizing up at 15, just being like, whoa. And right. And at the time I had no context of what the actual historical implications was, that it was about war, but because just the madness of it and the sheer size of it, it was just like, I agree with you. There's moments where when it clicks, and when you see something live, it's almost like a comedy and music. And a lot of times, it's truly best to experience the arts when you can live.
For sure.
You know, not that, I mean, movies are great and I love them. I love movies, but there's also something to be said for, like, it's a shame that people are not able to go see like things played out on stage too, because that's a whole.
Yeah, music, theater, any of that stuff. When you know, listening to a song on your headphones is great, but like to see the band actually perform in front of you, like that's a whole nother experience.
Yeah, there's nothing more thrilling when you see a musician do a version of a song that you love and they do it better than they did on the album. And you're like, oh, I wish I could have that on recording.
Right.
Who are some of your favorite musicians though?
Ooh, my favorite rock guitarist, because I could say my favorite guitarist is Nuno Bettencourt from Extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Extreme's not one of my favorite bands by no means, but Nuno is a rock god. He is. I don't know anybody that plays better than him that I can think of. And again, it's a personal tasting. Like with art, it's subjective. But I'm not really, much like with my taste in art, I'm not really into guys that just, sweep picking and flying up and down the neck on every solo all the time without a break, nonstop. Great. You can play that fast. That's awesome. Cool. But there's no breaks. There's no pause. There's no breath. There's no space in that kind of playing. And to me, that adds to the drama. That adds to, when you do go fast, you have that pause, that quiet moment, that melody, and then you go boom, and it's like, whoa, like that has more of an impact than just like flying on every solo all the time. And that's how I feel about art. It needs that space. It needs some sort of setup and drama and lighting and staging for me. That's just how my taste,
I mean,
and is amazing. He's just amazing.
That makes sense. Again, it's totally like that. And I'm looking at a lot of my favorite, when I'm thinking about my favorite musicians, like they do that. You have to, when you allow the moment for a breath, it's almost like when you come back in, it slams even harder than it ever could by just shredding nonstop or, doing that, like, or sort of like peacocking, I guess would be like the way some of them do.
Well, and it's like, I mean, classical music's a great example of it too. I mean, there's lots of up peaks and valleys where you're like, it gets super quiet. You almost have to, if you're listening to it, you have to turn the volume up. You can't even hear what's going on. And all of a sudden it's like, and you're like, holy crap,
Yeah, exactly. What's interesting is that a lot of the heavy metal, and I learned this because I heard somebody I'm a fan of Tori Amos, and she had an album called Boys for Pele, and it's an album that metalheads love, and because it's primarily featuring the harpsichord and the piano, but the way that the compositions are, it's interesting. Metal is it's closer to classical music than people realize as far as the composition goes.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that endlessly entertaining, because people, like, so many people think that it's like, terrible and blah blah. I'm like, actually, it's actually really difficult, and you have to be a very accomplished musician to do it well. It's not something that you can just. It's not like a bubblegum pop, which I love pop, don't get me wrong, but there's songs like Hello by Adele, which I'm like, okay. That took you how many months to write, and 3 people? No. I mean, like, stop that. Sorry, shouldn't say anything bad about it, but oh my God, Hello. No, it's 4 chords. Come on. You can't change the chords? Really? But I apologize on that one.
She's super talented. I think she's amazing. But I know
she used to be able to sing. I saw a live show where she smokes a cigarette. So she was doing Rolling in the Deep, and she did that thing where the chorus kicks in, and she put the mic out to the audience when she's supposed to hit the chorus, and not good. I mean,
well, that's been going on since I was, teenager. People doing that. I can't tell you how many times I've seen Ozzy do that, or Rob Halford from Judas Priest. I mean, there gets to a point where they just can't do it anymore, especially on tour. I mean, singing that high and that powerful on every show, every day.
I know, but I mean, you just change the transpose or rework it. I mean,
Well, they do now. I think they do that more now than they used to.
Yeah, you can jazz it up, or you can, but she's only 20, she's only 20 something.
Yeah. Well, she smokes it, you said,
That's right. It'll mess you up unless you're like, well, it messes everybody up, but, unless you are a contralto or, like Janis Joplin, I'm probably not going to work for you. But
I don't know if you realize this, but because you have that backdrop behind you, your shoulders, every once in a while, one of your shoulders disappears, or your hair is like flashing back and forth. It's like you're bald on one side, then your hair is there.
That's cool. I mean, it's
like your shoulder just disappeared.
it's what I actually do. It's what I look like in real life. It's made it very difficult for me to maintain personal relationships. People cannot stop staring.
I'm sure.
But before, it's been great. I have only one more question for you. But before I let you go, is there anything that you are working on now that you're allowed to work on? And also, actually, two questions because I have one more. But is there anything you're working on before you, that you would like to talk about now that you could talk about?
What can I show you here? Where is it? I just had it. No.
And no worries, I can always, cut it out.
No. I mean, I just had it though. I can't believe I misplaced it. Did I put it down there? No. I could show you this. You probably already saw this though, but I can show you this. Can you see that?
I can't. I don't want to talk because it turns the camera onto me.
That way you don't get a glare.
I love it.
Glare, but yeah. So
what was the?
Go ahead.
What was what was the inspiration behind that one again?
Well, again, for this one, the girl is my stepdaughter, so there was a picture of her on her Instagram feed that I saw, and I thought, like, man, that would be, I just liked the pose. There was something about the pose that I liked. So I asked her if I could use it, and she said, sure. And then again, much like with my horror stuff that I was telling you about, like, I just kind of sit with the image a while and try to figure out, like, what's she doing in the tub? Like, she was fully dressed, of course, when she was in the tub, but I just try to figure out what to do with it and just start playing around with ideas. And this is what I came up with. It took a while. This was not easy to come up with. I just was one of those ideas, like I said, where I was second guessing things and thinking like, oh, that's dumb. And eventually I'm like, you know what, I'm going to do whatever comes to my mind. And I pieced it together, and I liked it. So I just,
it really legitimately appears to be 3D. Like it really has the effect that it's popping out. Like,
yeah, thank you.
That is so cool. I mean, and that's a personal piece.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the personal pieces. Are they like, is it difficult to make time to do them? Because it seems like they have like a process. Like, how long does that take to do that painting, I guess, from gestation to execution?
That's a good question. I mean, the thing that takes the longest is the idea and the drawing part of it. Because even with that, because when I'm doing a piece for myself, even though that was for a gallery, the deadline is not so severe. Like, if I don't get it done for the deadline, then I just don't enter it. Like, it's not like, it's a commission for a book company where it's like, it needs to be done here or else.
Right.
It's just like, whatever, if I don't get it done, but I try to meet the deadline. And for that, it was just, I want to say it took about 3 weeks to a month, maybe.
Wow.
But it's not like every day. It's not like, that wasn't like I spent 8 hours to 10 hours a day thinking up the idea, working on the drawing. Like, I'm doing other things. So, it was, me sitting on the computer for a few hours trying to work up an idea. And then I had something else to work on. And then the next day I would maybe not do it. And the next day, maybe I would do a little bit more. And and I was stuck. I was stuck on it for a while, trying to think of what I wanted to do. Then I was like, is this even worth it? Like, I don't even know if this is like an idea. Like, I played around with a bunch of different versions of it that just wasn't clicking for me. And then I realized, like, if I put her in the tub and I make her a mermaid, I like that. I think that looks cool. And then, like, now what am I going to do? Now what am I going to do? And so I just had to keep working and adding and subtracting things and changing around different ideas. And then eventually it just started to work. And then I got a couple more things that worked together. And then I just had to figure out the rest. So
it's almost like Alice in Wonderland meets the Little Mermaid in a strange way, but yet with like a dose of Dali. And you learn it's got a hallucinogenic quality, but it's also got a very thoughtful quality to it. It's not like not like a acid explosion, like just weird for weird's sake. It's got this It's got this sort of like, this may sound weird, but like a clock ticking sort of rhythm to it. Like you can almost see it happening in real time. It's cool. It's cool stuff.
Thank you.
And this will be the last question before I let you go. But you have been getting reprinted, in Magic. Is there any chance that you would ever return to it? If not for for sets, but for a cameo, is there any interest on your end?
I would do Magic again. I just haven't been asked. I mean, it's been a while. So I don't even, it used to be where there was like one art director, and you would contact the art director. Now it seems like within one set, it's from what I've seen when guys post on Instagram, it seems like there's like 5 art directors. So I'm like, who are you supposed to talk to? So, and I haven't done any conventions for Magic where people can see what I'm doing. So, I don't know how it really, I haven't done it in so long. I don't even know who to talk to or any of it. So,
but you're getting reprinted.
No, I know.
And so, I mean, you're on the radar for sure.
Well, you would think, but it's been a while. I mean, I'm going to say, maybe 10 years. It's been a while, at least 10 years.
See, this is a time for like with the amount of variety of art that they're doing. They're doing a lot of variations. Like they're doing like these secret layers. They're doing sets where the point is to have like an offshoot of a set where you have a focus on one particular artist, or you have these markedly different styles than what the set ordinarily is, and it's a perfect. There's a lot of people coming back to it that are that haven't been in it for a while, and I mean, so yeah, I'd say if hopefully if I can help in any way, shape, or form, I will do so, because I love the notion of just. I'm one of those people that I love seeing a return to, to something, like when a character comes back in a sequel, like kind of thing. It's like, I like to see a continuation. It's just and it would be cool to see, especially with the changes that you've had as an artist as a whole. It'd be really cool to see what you would do with.
Yeah, I'd be up for it. It'd be cool to get some. I mean, like the Innistrad set looked so cool. I did something for the first Innistrad, which was fun. But yeah, some of the more horror related stuff would be great. But I don't really get asked to do that too much. But yeah, the new set looks great. The new one that just came out. What is it called? The Streets
New Capenna or Kami New Capenna? Streets of New Capenna.
Man, that art looks great. I haven't seen one bad painting for that set.
It's something else. It's great, and I think that Magic is embracing the fact that the diversity in artists is the key thing. Like, I think for a while, I mean, I understand the notion of branding, and I understand the notion of style guides being sort of the Bible, so to speak, but I believe that they understand that the audience likes to see what they like as art, as opposed to what they are being sort of told to like. And
right.
I think they've wisened up to it, but I'm throwing it out there for sure. I'd love to see return and yeah, do something horror. Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah, it'd be great. It would be great.
Well, I thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. It's been great.
Sure. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much again.
Isn't Alan wonderful? He is. And you know what isn't? What? The side effects of glistening oil. You're not kidding. I've had breakouts on places I never even thought that it could occur. Me too. Have you been retaining water? Yep. And all I want is chocolate. Oh my god. Let's order some chocolate. Does Uvenwald Eats deliver chocolate? They have to. And then we could also eat the delivery boy. That's a little sexist. It's delivery person. You're right. Why am I such a sexist piece of shit? Oh, honey, you're not. It's just the glistening oil. You think that's all that is, really? Yes. Don't cry. You'll get ichor all over yourself. Do you think they liked the interview with Alan Pollack? I'm sure they did. And they can let us know in the comments. I hope they do. I will order a chocolate-covered delivery person. Wait a minute. What? I thought that becoming Phyrexian means you have less emotions. Oh yeah, you're right. I guess we're just going through the change. That's it. Order 2 chocolate-covered delivery people. On it.
Bye-bye.